He's passionate about cloud native technologies and is a micro blogger in different social platforms. He's involved as a community member and speaker with Colabonix, Cloud Native, and data management groups. He's also part of the CNCF India community. Over to you, Suman.
Yeah, hi, Chinmay. Thanks
Yeah.
for the introduction. So just let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
It looks good.
Okay. Yeah. So we had very great sessions on the morning. Like we have topics from Terraform to Helm, then Tectong, and then now AutoML. And so why not have something around best practices? So my topic for today would be to basically uh, have one interactive based discussions where we will just focus on how we can basically harden our Kubernetes cluster. So as a hacker, we don't, means as a normal user, we don't fall in the hands of the hacker. So the topic name is like 12 ways not to get hacked your Kubernetes cluster. So starting, I'll not go much into the introduction as Chinmay already told. So if you want to connect with me personally, I'm available on my social handlers, which is given in the right-hand side. And also I do regular tweets on some on various topics ranging from cloud DevOps, specifically on platform as a service side and on microservices, and you can connect to me. Okay, so coming into the our main agenda. First of all, why we should why should we first of all discuss about the security? Yes, security is very much important, right? And at any point of time, it's important to discuss what are the areas that we can tighten, whether we are working as an administrator, as a DevOps engineer, or maybe as a developer also. We should know where are the flaws in our platform which could impact the applications that has been deployed on the platform. So looking into the trend model roundabout just from 2018, just since 2 years, there has been multiple security breaches that happened, and specifically it impacted not only the component level, but also it impacted majorly at the company or the infrastructure level also. Right in the year 2018, there was a hack which happened in Tesla where there was issue where the one of the worker node was compromised, and the hacker was able to establish a connection to the to some of the Chinese data center, and they were able to basically install some crypto jacking. Means they were able to get some crypto jacking software actually. Then there was some hacks that happened roundabout in the HCD. Some leaks was reported in about 2018. Starting in 2019, we have something at the dashboard level also. So at the dashboard side, it was more about how the data was exposed, and the pod that were running was misconfigured, and so this led to a breach. There was a serious RunC vulnerability which was introduced in the year 2019, means it was actually caught at that time. From there, again, we got some new vulnerabilities in the service mesh components such as Envoy. And recently, around about last year, in the year June and August, there was some vulnerabilities reported with the kubectl copy command, where it was reported that the kubectl copy, if it was done for with a certain data, it would actually lead a serious breach in the host kernel. So and it continues, and in October also there was a DDoS attack which was actually reported on the Kubernetes API server. So as we can see, the security has been compromised at certain point of the other, and at all of the components, like most of the components in the Kubernetes cluster. So then let's think about that from where we should start. So let's break the basics. So if we think about a container, it's just as we know, it's if you think barely a container is a process which is running on your host operating system, right? So thinking as an isolated, it's just a kind of an isolated process which is running on your host machine. So coming about thinking how we can basically secure our cluster, we have to think from the outside, like from the edge. So it all starts from the infrastructure where you are deploying. So there we have to have a very strong network isolation, data isolation, metadata isolation. Then it goes into the cluster. Okay, so cluster means obviously you would be having a cluster if you're running on a managed cloud service provider such as on Amazon Web Services or Azure. You would be having on multiple availability zones, right? So you have to think about how you safeguard that. So you should have a very strong control plane isolation, network isolation, data isolation, metadata isolation. From there, you come into the node. Node is basically the host machines where you are deploying your pod. So there also you need similar level of isolation. From there, we come into the namespaces, because a namespace ideally isolates or basically creates an environment where you create a pod into, and that isolates another pod which would be running into another namespace. So it's like basically it's an isolated compartment for your pod to run. So from there, the next thing that comes is your actual application, which is actually deployed on a container. And so you should also think about how you can harden the security around the container side. So then, before jumping in, like from where to start and what are the ways that we will discuss, let's think that why we need, or like why we need to have a tight, we need to basically tighten the security across the cluster. So before going to that, so there would be multiple questions that are me coming. So these some of the questions that comes as an administrator, as a DevOps person, or as even the infrastructure architect. Like, do we review the access right to the Kubernetes cluster to understand what would be the inside attack vectors? Means who are the probable attackers for our cluster? Have we ever thought of, do we have that visibility of the Kubernetes pods being deployed? Okay, so like for example, we would be deploying a set of pods, right? But not all pods would be accessible. Let's say if you are deploying an 3-tier application, right? So in the 3-tier, there would be a kind of a database service, there could be a messaging service, and they would be connecting to an application. And ideally, we should not expose the database services because they would be accessed by the application within that particular cluster. So for our, the entry point is the application pod. So we should understand that where we should define the threshold where we can actually define the security. So do we have a way to detect bad behavior in case of east-west traffic between containers? So north-south is something which is coming just on top of from the top to the bottom into the host machines, where east-west is something which is actually going from one node to another node. So do we know that what is the kind of traffic which is passing and how we basically modulate that traffic that is going? Next, the question can come is like, do we whether we can monitor what is actually running inside the pod or the container, or even if we know what the application we are deploying. So do we know that what are the restrictions that we can impose based on which also the application would run seamlessly? Like, means what is the hardening that we can actually create within the container environment? And then the next thing can come is like, how do we simplify the security alerts and the operation team monitoring to pinpoint the most important attacks which requires attention? So not all the security incidents that are reported are vulnerable. Some can be basically just do away, because there we can know that there can be some warnings that can come, but we have to identify that out of 10 alerts which are critical and should be treated on priority. So how do we segment particular containers or network connections in a Kubernetes environment? So are there any particular way that we define that we can actually achieve this? What are the different type of the different networking plugins that we are running within the Kubernetes environment, that also we should understand. So after going through all these questions, well, it seems that it's difficult to tell that I know Kubernetes security, because there's a lot of things that one has to look into and understand, and basically think about that from which point one should start. So let's then deep dive into the hacker's mind. Okay, so as a hacker inception, okay, how how he thinks whenever he thinks about, okay, I'm just going to exploit this cluster. So it has been seen that whatever the security breaches that has happened, it has happened on three different areas. One is the control plane. The control plane is basically the brain of your Kubernetes cluster. So it is which is running that show, where you are actually getting a cluster up and running, and then you are basically creating your app and deploying it. Networking is something which is obviously required, otherwise will not have like node-to-node communication, or like you will not be able to create a ingress policy, egress policy. You will not have service definitions. And then obviously the next thing comes is the workloads, where you are actually deploying your application containers. So on the control plane, what are the areas we can focus on is basically the TLS encryption, the RBAC management, the encryption key management, and etc. Networking, as I told, node-to-node communication, node-to-pod, firewall policies, etc. And workloads is where you think about that. How can we basically use a more secure image to deploy in the cluster? Like how we can prevent vulnerability in the images, how we can offer a better assessment in using an image that can actually be deployed on the Kubernetes cluster. Then how do we define the pod boundaries? Like the main intention of any, while deploying the best framework, is to limit the attack surface area, just to give as less privilege, so that we were able to just run the application without giving much exposure towards the internet, or the internet facing site, to basically access that application, and also run it with least privilege. Okay, so that is what we are going to define within the pod boundaries and running as a non-root. Okay. So then, if we think about the Kubernetes attack vectors, okay, so what are they? Okay, or how we can basically segregate them. Okay, so there can be different areas or different points where an attack can happen. Okay, starting first, obviously, would be the Kube API server. It's the basically the front-facing API for the Kubernetes master. So obviously, any request that is coming in has to be basically authenticated, authorized, and that is the function of a Kube API server, which it does. It's basically the gatekeeper for the Kubernetes. But then we have to also make sure that we define the policies or define our configurations in a manner that it can basically able to achieve the task, which is in a very due diligent manner. So first is like access to machines of VMs that we are talking about, and then the next thing that can come is on the HCD. So HCD is basically the database for your Kubernetes, and so it's important to safely secure it, because means we know that the data can be compromised. So so we do have policies where we maintain encryption at data, means encryption of the data at rest, also in transit, that we'll discuss. So coming to the control plane components, yeah, that we I discussed, like by the Kubernetes API or the proxy, like the kube proxy where it is exposed. So this can be one of the attack vector. So once someone goes into the control plane level, so he can basically intercept the traffic, network traffic across the nodes that is happening. He can modify the behavior of the traffic, okay, and then inject his own vulnerability that can impact down to the kernel of the operating system. Coming on to the node side, kubelet is one of the point which we is one of the component which we should secure, because that is actually managing the life cycle of your pod. So it is important that you manage you have a tight security. How the kubelet is scheduling the scheduling to manage the pods on the worker nodes. And then if from there, if we come onto the pod level, so the application is deployed on the container. Here also, we try to have a tight security along the pod, along the container level, so that we can basically ensure that whatever, even if you're using some volume, or let's say we are basically using some or passing certain environment variables, those are basically done at a very restricted level. It's not like we are giving something in general from outside, so it should be tightened actually. Also, once we manage the security along the pod and container, the next thing that comes, obviously, the code that we are running. So before deploying it, we should also be ensured that what are the various points, like there can be an XML injection, there can be there can be some different level vulnerability that can happen at the code level. So we should ensure that whatever we are deploying, it has the correct means it is quite secure in terms of deploying in on a cluster. So so coming then, let's deep dive into the different like the 12 ways, as I told, that which we can think about managing these Kubernetes server. So first, the component that comes is the Kube API. Okay, so Kube API, as we know, is basically the front-facing API which takes all the requests that is coming to be dispatched as a unit task and to be deployed on the worker nodes. So the best rule, it says that we should use a transport layer security TLS for all the API traffic that is coming in. So all the components within the Kubernetes cluster should have a mutual TLS encrypted. Okay, or they should use it. All the API clients must be authenticated. So even though if the request is coming from an end user, or even the request is coming from multiple components or the node and proxies, the request should be authenticated before sending to another component. The API call, which needs to be authorized. So how we basically think about authorization? So we can think about the different RBAC policies where we can limit access, that who is sending the request. So basically, by default, when we deploy, the default RBAC policy that gives is the admin that with which we can basically deploy all the set of resources. But if we are managing that, if you want only a certain set of users to access the cluster, then we also need to define the policies, how they are going to access it. So this RBAC I'll be discussing in the coming slide, but just to have an interpretation that interpretation that the API call that we are making should also be it should also be used with an RBAC component which matches your incoming user request to a set of roles that has been defined at the backend. And then the best other possible way is that we can integrate the Kubernetes with a kind of a third-party auth providers such as a Google or GitHub, which basically gives or improves the security and identity management access policies. And also it prevents administrators to reconfigure the Kube API server so that to add or remove the users. So basically we can manage through this third-party operator. Some of them are OAuth 2.0 or DEX that we can use actually. So next coming, as I was discussing, is the RBAC policy. So RBAC is basically the policy-rich engine which lets user permission to use the resources within the Kubernetes cluster with the level of with the level that we define, like what is the basic set of access that we can define and what are the higher set of access that we can define. Based on that, we can limit the access through which the user can use this RBAC policies. So the default RBAC settings only allows limited API access for anonymous user, which basically helps us to run healthy and which basically allows to have a healthy discovery checks along the entire cluster. Now we have the privilege always to modify the RBAC settings, and this can be done using different configurations. So First of all, so Kubernetes initially started with the ABAC, which is the attributed rollbacks. Sorry, attributed access policy, which actually got superseded in I think in version 1.6 with RBAC. So the best way is that we can set the authorization mode on the API server to use the RBAC model. That would basically secure the way how we are going to access the cluster. Then also we can configure the RBAC for the kubelets by including the node authorizer in the node authorization mode that we can use within that list. And then basically we can review the RBAC policies which are defined within the cluster, so that whatever the policies which are not being used or which has been configured incorrectly can be removed, because this can also pose some level of security threat and can lead in compromising a pod which is running in the cluster. And the best way is that we specify the role and cluster roles to specific users only who needs to use the cluster. Okay, so basically we start with role and role binding to the users who needs to access resources within a particular namespace that would be scoped locally. And then we define something called as cluster role and cluster role binding, which would basically allow only specific users, say cluster admin users, who needs to basically modify or implement some changes on the global level. So yeah, so that is what I just told. So the next thing that can come is securing the kubelet. So kubelet, as I told, is one of the important area where there's a quite a big chance that malicious code can be injected and a hacker can gain a free entry into that particular container, because a kubelet by way is just running your inter pod lifecycle. Okay, and so it is very easy for someone to someone to basically get access to the API and like compromise the pod which is running. So this can also be like tightened by specifying the anonymous auth policy to false, so that only the authorized users are allowed to run or basically do any action with the kubelet, and it basically disables any other user who is not authorized to use the cluster. Next, we can basically ensure that the requests which are authorized are not set to always allow mode. By default, it is always it is by default set. But when we think about that, do we actually need all the requests to be authorized or to be run on the Kubernetes cluster? It may not be. It depends on the user's requirement and what the users intend to do. So basically, this we can think about by changing the authorization mode not to always allow. Okay, so it will basically gives us a point where we can validate that request which is coming onto the cluster. Then the next thing that come is limit the permission of the kubelet by including the node restrictions. So this will basically allow a kubelet to modify only the pods which are bound to it, and not not all the pods which are coming to it. So we'll limit the number of connections that it is made that is making to the kubelet site. So the next,
Suman, there are a few
yes.
questions if you want to take between.
Yeah, sure.
So there was a question, bit of a older context. Is there a way to auto patch Kubernetes, or should I do manually?
Sorry, can you come back again?
Is there a way to auto patch Kubernetes, or or I need to do it manually?
No, there is no direct way to auto patch, but there is a the way I mean, like you have to patch your node basically based on the patching level that you are trying to do. However, if you are thinking of doing it automatically, then maybe if you know that so obviously the node should be patched, and if you think that you have to do it every month, maybe you can configure through some automated job through your CI/CD pipeline, and that you can implement. But there is no direct way that it can be patched, or like the Kubernetes can directly take the patching and do a self upgrade itself. You have to do it.
Okay, so there is one more question related to storage layer attacks and how to tackle it, but I think Vikas has already answered it.
Okay.
There is one more question. Is it possible to implement a prescribed security practices in a totality with managed Kubernetes services like EKS, AKS,
Mhm.
etc.?
Yes, there are prescribed set of means there's a checklist definitely for the managed services provider, and we can follow that surely. So basically, the difference that comes when managing an complete vanilla based installation and a managed service based installation is that for a vanilla based installation, you have to think about both of your control plane and your data plane, because here you are managing end-to-end entity. For the managed services, the control plane is with the cloud provider, so so they take care about ensuring that your nodes are patched at the correct time, the Kubernetes is running with the correct version. But still, if you want to follow, there are certain set of checklists which maybe I can share post my talk on our Collabnix page. That should be fine.
Yes, yeah, Suman, I think we already up for the time. I think you can just
Yeah,
wrap
yeah.
up with some logical ending. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly go. So basically, HCD is something where where we need to basically think about how we can safely implement the TLS certificate version, because HCD is actually storing or basically taking care of the data which is stored in the database. And so it should be something like we would set a mutual TLS certificates and also enable HTTPS connections also. Some other configuration settings also need to be done, like setting a trusted CA file to specify the certificate authority which needs to be signed, and also using always the peer client certificate auth to true that allows to run a correct certificate for your HCD node. So some other is also mentioned. So I'll just quickly go and just take all the other approaches that we'll take. So next is the service account policy. So service account is one of the important fact, because here with a default service account, you get the complete policy, means you get the complete access to do whatever you want into the cluster. So ideally, if we plan to harden our cluster, then obviously we should try to create our own service account for the application that we are deploying. Okay, so that is how we do it while patching a particular node. So we basically use the service account, and then basically we can mention that to be used in that particular application. The best practice is to create a dedicated service account for every application that you want to configure. Coming to the networking segment, basically Kubernetes by default allows networking to happen from pod to pod. So it's like generally you can also restrict that using certain policies. The best approach is using the networking policies, which is provided with the pod selector as the value, so that you know that whatever is the ingress and the egress traffic, you can basically allow only certain ports to be accessed towards the application while you block the other ports. Also, it is important that you restrict the cloud metadata API access, which is needed to be run for your network policies. One more thing just to say here, that while you are doing this network policies, there's a tool called as deep packet inspection, which is in-depth technique to understand that what is the container level what is the networking level vulnerabilities that can appear at the layer 7 protocol. So this can also include some malicious XML object executables which you can populate. So it's a highly recommended approach that you basically use that tool to mitigate that particular attack. So once we discuss about the control plane, we should come into understanding how we manage them from the workload perspective. So in the workload side, there are different capabilities that comes which we should always try to leverage. Like including AC Linux, AppMer, Seccom, BPF, which basically provides a least privilege to apply to your application, so that how the applications you're deploying get the minimum access to run it on the cluster. Then there is a policy through resource quota, where we can limit how much resources you can actually access on your node, like what is the limit that you define and how much you can request for it. Okay. There are different other parameters, such as utilizing seccomp, and then using a read-run mount access, and using a minimal OS, which basically reduces the surface area for the attack that you are planning. Okay. So Kubernetes actually provides certain benchmarking tools.
Suman, sorry to interrupt, but we are already, I guess, much over the time. If you can just wrap it quickly in a minute, it would be great.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, then I'll just quickly go into the main area where I just want to discuss is the threat matrix, which is basically the point where we should understand that how you should carry about taking assumption from where you can start the production. So it's a nice framework which is developed by Microsoft, which basically divides your entire platform into multiple areas, such as like initial access, the execution. So right from starting from the edge cluster to the execution to the persistent, then to the privilege escalation, to the defense, and from there to the credential access, the discovery, and the lateral movement. So this is nice. You can go through and you can understand more about how you can enable protection. Some tools and technologies which is around that can help regarding the image security. We have the Harbor as one of the tool to provide scanning your images. Then Claire, which is coming from the CoreOS. There's also one tool. For the environment hardening, you can use the KubeHunter, KubeBench, Open Policy Agent. So there is a different set of tools coming from Acosec, Twistlock. So if you just want to go through, we have the reference in the Collabnix page under the Cube tools, where you can get to understand all the listed tools that can be used, that you can use. And yeah, so that's,
I think that's it, Suman. Thanks a lot. I'm sure there are a few more questions which are flowing on the chat. I think it would be great if you can answer those over there. Okay. So we'll quickly try to see if we can have the quiz game. Sangam, can you share your screen? Yeah, guys, I won't go again. We already know what we need to do. The Kahoot app, and the game pin is 5117759. Let's join quickly and play quickly. So as I see, there are only 3 players. The game pin is already there on the YouTube live chat. Let me paste it again. Sangam, if possible, once you start the game, try to post your question onto chat as well, because I guess on the chat it will appear faster compared to the broadcast, YouTube broadcast. Come on, guys, please join. We have only 8 players as of now. A lot of goodies to be won and taken home. We call it the swag that you'll get if you're the winner for any of this contest. The game pin is already shared on the screen as well as on the YouTube live chat. Yeah, I see a few questions about lag, video lag. So yeah, Prathamesh, we would be posting questions on live chat as well. And again, I'll be reading out loud as well. So the question is, which port does Cube app server listen to? Sangam, can you paste this question on the live chat? Next question is, which tool can be used to scan registry container images? Looks like we are timing out before our users get to see the screen. The next question is, does data encryption at rest is provided in etcd? So yeah, we have a winner. Prasad is the first one, then Himanshu, and then Nits. So sorry guys, I know I can see chats. There is a lot of delay with the video that has been shared and the questions and the options that is getting populated on the Kahoot.